where we here at Rough Magic Games teach you how to play a different tabletop role-playing game every episode. That's right, we run through it so you don't have a rough start. My name is Charlotte, I use she, her pronouns, and I am a professional GM with Rough Magic Games, a collection of many more professional game masters for hire. If you're interested in playing a game with one of our GMs, be sure to check out roughmagicgames.com. If you already know who we are and love what we do, check out our Patreon, the link is in the doobly-doo below. I love exploring the wide world of pen and paper role playing games, and tonight my guest is.
Hi, I'm Max. I am one of the aforementioned additional fellow professional GMs with Rough Magic, and I am very excited about the system we're going to talk about tonight because it is one of my favorite systems as well. And I've run it several times with Rough Magic. So,
Yeah. I think if anyone in the Chicago area, if you are at an event with Max, they will probably be running this game in all likelihood.
potentially, I make no promises, but like if somebody else is running D&D or like you want to do it, I love to run this system. I love to run I should say I run a hack of this system that is even simpler than what we're going to talk about tonight. But I love this as a starter system to get new players into stuff. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Are you going to introduce the system?
Well, since you are already talking about it, I'll let you do the honors. What system are we talking about tonight, Max?
Amazing. So we are talking about a system called Kids on Bikes. And truly, Charlotte, you know the author and all of the crunchy details. I famously cannot read. And I learned this system by the great oral traditions of it being taught to me while it was taught to a bunch of children as well. And I was like, if kids can learn it, then I can learn it. And I could, and I did. And I'm really excited for our audience members to learn it too. But yeah, crunchy deets. The system is called Kids on Bikes.
Kids on
And
Bikes, and and it is a collaborative storytelling RPG set in small towns with big adventure. In the game, you take on the roles of everyday people, children, teens, or adults, grappling with strange, terrifying, and powerful forces that they cannot defeat, control, or even fully understand. It's written by Jonathan Gilmour and Doug Lewandowski, and published by Renegade Games and Hunters Entertainment. Yeah, so Kids on Bikes, you've obviously played quite a bit of it. I love that you learned it via the oral tradition.
yes,
I played a little bit of Kids on Bikes. They also have a bunch of spin-off series which I've played. One of them being Kids on Brooms, which I have a physical copy of. Lovely game. Another
we were
spin-off.
just talking about other representations of this in terms of actual play. The Dimension 20. I don't remember the campaign name, but it's Abria Iyengar as
Misfits
the
and Magic, I
GM.
believe it's called.
Yes, Misfits and Magic uses Kids on Brooms, and then
Uses
the
Kids on
recent
Brooms.
Brennan Lee Mulligan Mentopolis is a hack of kids, a sanctioned hack of Kids on Bike.
Ooh, yes.
Recommendations.
They also do Teens in Space, which breaks
Yes,
the naming convention a little bit, but we're okay
I've
with that.
I have actually heard slash played a little in Teens in Space, and truly, you can kind of the system lends itself to age group slash descriptor in location or situation, so you can kind of
Anywhere.
mess with a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very flexible system, as we'll get into later. But yeah, Kids on Bikes, Kids on Brooms, and Teens in Space all use the same kind of basic rules they're all very similar with kind of their own individual flair to fit whatever setting or mood they're going after.
But Kids on Bikes is going to be your simplest, most basic place to start.
Yes. Absolutely. Oh, well then I think that does it for our introduction. Should we get into it, Max?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go. You're
All
leading this
right.
party.
Hell yeah. So normally at the beginning of Rough Start, we talk about the lore of the game. Um, And Kids on Bikes is a little different. It is very much inspired by, your Stranger Things, your E.T., the
It's
Goonies.
it's inspired by like a mid 80s ish pre-internet, pre-cell phone, small town, Spielberg-esque. There is a greater universe and a greater world at play, and we're just getting a taste of it through the eyes of the kids or teens or whatever who are experiencing it.
Exactly. It's kind of that kind of latchkey kid phenomenon where you are just off with your friends going on adventures.
And
Um,
something crazy happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even Stephen King's It kind of would fall into this kids on bikes scenario, just an especially horrific kids on bike scenario.
Mean
Uh,
DM.
yeah, but
GM, excuse me, yeah.
but beyond that, there is no like lore in Kids on Bikes, and in fact, you as the players and the game master control the lore. The game starts with world building. Um, so you decide on like the tone, of the story, if you want to go with it or ET, if you decide on the era. When I've played a couple times and we played in the early 90s as characters in the 90s.
I love
Uh,
that. I've done a like Arthur-esque 90s version of
oh
it
my gosh.
where everybody, because I don't know, I love to play as a little animal, and I think the system lends itself well to that. So we've played as like little animals who are witches familiars, but we've also been like 90s animals who are basically in Arthur the TV show.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, there's nothing in Kids on Bikes that says you have to be humans. You can be an
Right,
animal.
right. Um, it so when they're setting up the world building, the nice thing is there is a quick start version of this game. So if you're someone who's like, I just want to jump into gameplay, and or I don't necessarily have the time for a full session zero or a full world building, or that feels really overwhelming, the quick start has set up like a situation. I think it's like a mining town in that one. Or if your party or yourself is interested in doing the world building, they have all these amazing like questions to set it up, and you can either go around player to player and have each person pick one out, or go in the order, or develop them naturally with a discussion, and like figure out what that looks like. And there's a lot of flexibility there. And the nice thing about doing the world building is then you're as a looking at it from a game master's point of view, you're getting the buy-in from your characters and your players of like what are they going to connect to, and it's also great because it means they're helping you to tell the story.
Yes, absolutely. And we actually have some examples of those questions, those building questions from the book up on the screen now. These are, you can take turns at the table answering questions. And then you also get to share a rumor about the town. That's kind of the last step of world building if you're going with the world building. Which in any game, I make my players come up with rumors about the other characters or about the world. So I am a huge fan of this rule. I think, you can learn a lot from Kids on Bikes and start implementing these rumors that do not have to be true into all of your games. That's my hot tip for you.
Rumors is great when you get it if you have players who are interested in either any kind of political hierarchy or any kind of like they're very socially driven, then having rumors on the table, because it brings a level of objectivity to it. But
Yeah.
that's like 400 levels GMing there. You don't need to be doing all that if you don't want to. But it's
No,
built into
definitely
this
not
game, which is
necessary,
super nice.
but it is fun. All right, and I think that's what we're gonna do for lore, since there isn't really much, but just know that it has some wonderful tools for building the world that you play the game in at the beginning of the book. And we're gonna go into actually how to play Kids on Bikes, the game mechanics in question. Um, So Kids on Bikes is a very character-centric um, story game. So we're going to start with character creation, um, which we've
And
got
I
the
think
over. Go ahead.
the majority of the mechanics play into characters. Like it
Absolutely.
is the game master at no point has to roll dice. I personally, I often find ways to roll dice, or when I'm not sure about making a decision, and or like sometimes I'll brew up some NPCs and then I'm using them the same way the characters would. Um, but this makes it so that your players like one of my favorite things about this game and what I'll tell people when I'm trying to sell them on this system is I'm like, I like to roll all of the shapes of dice.
Mm-hmm.
And in building your character and in talking about the like statistics of it, you learn the mechanics and you get to use all the shapes of dice. So so excited to delve into that.
Yeah,
Um,
if because it's like you've got this whole set of dice that you buy, and for other systems you only really ever use one or
for
two or
other
maybe three. Other
systems, you don't
systems,
necessarily, unless you're a certain kind of player, get to use the D12 very often, and that's
yeah.
disappointing. It's a great shape.
But here you can use all of them. It's so exciting.
So, okay, so in the official rules, which are up on our screen right now, it has a way to build a character and it has a lot of details. And I'm going to actually start with a TLDR and with my like hacked
Yeah.
version, which is where I ignore the tropes and age strength flaws. I go right into the stats and what the different dice do. And I think these other things that we're seeing right now on the screen come into play later, but the thing that is the most important to understand, especially as a newer player, is how do you do what you want to do and how do you make your character do what you want to do. Do
Yeah.
we have a slide for those skills slash stats?
I've got an example of a character sheet which will highlight
Cool.
the stats on the next slide. So if you want to hop over to that slide, we
Yeah,
can
let's
talk a
hop
little bit
over to that
about
slide.
that. Hopping over to the slide.
Throwing out the order of things.
No,
Um,
it's fine. Oops. There we go.
there we go. So when I introduced this game in a quick start, like a very quick start, like a you're going to learn to play and be playing in less than 30 minutes, I start by talking about the skills slash stats and what they are. If you are familiar with other systems, you will be familiar with things like abilities and skills. Same kind of thing in this game, but in Kids on Bikes, it is boiled down to 6 of them. And when I teach this to kids, we do little like hand symbols with them and little body movements because
Oh.
it helps us remember them. So the first one to know is brains. Um, your brain stat is anytime you are using your brain to solve a problem. So these are typically like intelligence, problem solving abilities. When a character thinks about something and is able to be like very clever in a situation. Um, you have these 6 skills, one of which is the first of which is brains, and then you have 6 dice. And each of the dice is a different level of how well your character can do that. With the higher level of dice, the die being the best possible thing you could be at it. So when we look at our typical die set, our highest die, we're not looking at the percentages. Like put your percentages away.
The highest
You
single
don't
die.
give it a little kiss and say I love you goodbye. The highest single die we're going to look at is the D20. Of D20 in a skill, that is your best possible thing. You're like famous for this. We when I talk about this, we'd like to think of who is a character who would have a D20 in brains. Charlotte.
Ooh, you cut out a little bit. What was that?
Oh, I was saying, Charlotte, can you think of a character who would have a D20? Their best skill is brains, since we now know
Ooh.
what brains is.
Ooh, I'm still stuck in a Halloween mood. Victor Frankenstein would have a 20 in brains.
Ooh, yeah, he is a very clever individual, and he probably does a lot of science, which requires a lot of like thinking and keeping track of things. So that's a really
Mhm.
good one. Um, there are a lot of other characters who might have that. And the way that I like to think about it is I think of a character whose go-to solution is using their brain to solve a problem is going to have that D20 in brains. On the complete opposite side of that, the lowest side that we're going to have is a D4. And so if your character has a D4 in something, they're terrible. They're awful. More often than not, they're not good at this thing. In fact, people might even make fun of them because they're not very good at this thing. So each of your dice is going to go with a different skill. And we're going to talk more about those skills, but that's just something to keep in mind as you are thinking about the character that you perhaps want to build. So first
Yes.
we have brains.
Brains.
Then there's brawn, which is your hands on your
Brawn.
hips. Your brawn is your physical stature and like your strength, but not necessarily your fighting skills. My favorite example of a character who would have a D20 in brawn is Luisa from Encanto,
Yes.
because she solves all of her problems by lifting the heavy things and bearing all of the weight. So I like to think of that as like ideal peak brawny character. So we have brains, so we have brawn, and then we have charm.
Charm.
Um, Charm is basically what it sounds like. It's your social skills, your charismatic skills, your ability to talk your way out of a problem. Charlotte, who's a character who might have a D20 in Charm?
Ooh, man. My brain first went Captain Kirk from Star Trek.
Yeah, I think definitely, especially the like 2009 Chris Pine.
Yeah.
Though he might also have a different one because I have very strong opinions about J.J. Abrams. Um, though I honestly think like Spock might. Star Trek is so hard because they're all
It
so
is
sassy.
yes.
However, on the flip side of that, Star Wars is very easy. I like to say that Han Solo
Han Solo. Yeah.
totally has a D20 in
Absolutely.
charm. Even if he doesn't always succeed, his go-to is to try to talk his way out of his problems. So we have brains,
Brains.
brawn,
Brawn.
charm, and then we have fight.
Fight.
So fight is your tactical ability, is the way that I like to put it, because fighting is both your ability to fight and think about fighting, but also your ability to get out of a fight.
And getting out of a
So,
fight is very handy in this game too. So, you
mhm.
want to keep that in mind.
Or to see how a fight started, or to see like what might happen next, or how you might diffuse a fight from happening.
Yeah.
Captain Kirk might also, Chris Pine Captain Kirk might also have a D20 in fight, especially. I just rewatched 2009 and I have very strong opinions about it.
Oh, wait,
I don't need to get
Max, we're gonna
into.
have to talk strong Star Trek opinions after this.
Uh,
So,
okay, at some point, but it's not now. We're talking about this game. Um, can you think of a character that might have a D20 in fight?
ooh, Rocky from Rocky.
Well, yeah, true. One of my favorite answers that a kid came up with once was Captain America, because
Oh
his
yeah.
weapon is a shield. So yes, he does punch things sometimes, but a lot of the time he's actually using his shield in a really clever way that comes from him having really good fighting skills and having this thing that, like, this prop almost that comes from fighting, but he's able to use it in really interesting ways.
Totally.
So, brains, brawn, charm, fight, flight, and then you do the Superman for this one. It's
Or
hard
a
to do
Naruto
sitting.
run.
Normally I'm standing. Naruto run is actually a great way to put it because flight is like your speed, your dexterity, your agility. Naruto probably would have a D20 in flight. I don't actually know that much about anime, but Sonic the Hedgehog also. I feel like this is an easy one because if you think about characters who are like, they're fast, but it could talk about not only the speed, but also if there's someone who is very flighty, like they are quick to leave a situation, they get out of things, they're always keeping their eyes on the exit, they are maybe more sneaky or more acrobatic. These are all things that might fall under the flight skill. Okay, Charlotte, can you go through all of these except for the last one on your own this time? Pop quiz.
Yes.
Go.
All right. Brains.
Yes.
Brawn.
Yes.
Charm.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Flight.
And then the last one we have is grit.
Grit.
And I actually really like this pose because it helps me keep in mind like what grit means. And if you think of the movie True Grit, what happens in True Grit? So much, and they live through all of it.
She goes through a lot in that film.
Grit stands for goes right through it. Grit is your resilience, your durability. When I think of a character who might have a D20 in Grit, I think of like Katniss Everdeen, for example. Can you think of any other ones?
The girl from True Grit.
Excuse me. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So those are your 6 stats. And then in there, you're putting each of your dice in along with the stat that goes best with it. And when I am playing with folks in like a walk-up situation where we're trying to get into playing, from there, I jump into a couple more mechanics, and that is the like basic, most preliminary thing you can do with character creation. And I love how fast that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you can do a little bit more if you think people can handle it, but especially if you have people who are very like role play reticent, having something that's like, you're going to do one of these things and at any time you can roll for it, and you either tell me what you want to use or tell me what you want to do and then I tell you which one to roll.
Yeah,
makes it really great for a variety of types of player and styles.
A little anchor to, call upon in dark times.
Absolutely. But if you want to talk a little bit more about the more intricate and more detailed aspects of character creation that are in like the fuller game, I would love to throw it to you.
All right. Yes, I'm going to go a little bit more into the fine details, but I think that was an excellent explanation of the 6 stats. So in Kids on Bikes, they have what are called tropes, which very helpfully assign a die size to that stat for you already. So you don't have to think about where you want each one to go. So, for example, we've got up on the screen Blue Collar Worker and Brilliant Mathlete. You can see they have specific ages that apply to them. So blue collar worker can only be an adult, but a brilliant mathlete can be a child or a teen character. And children, teens, and adults get different bonuses to different stats as well. So beyond those 2 tropes, they also have the brutish jock, the bully, conspiracy theorist, funny sidekick, laid-back slacker, loner weirdo, overprotective parent, plastic beauty, popular kid, reclusive eccentric, scout, stoic professional, wannabe, and young provider. So they've really hit like the gamut of character archetypes that you would see in a story like this. There's a lot to choose from, but if you have a certain idea for a character in your mind and you don't think any of those tropes fit, you can absolutely build one yourself and pick a die to go in each of those stats and, fill it out from there. Additionally, for characters all have strengths and flaws. Strengths are specifically mechanical advantages, and flaws are really just purely for role playing flavor. So, like you can see, for example, the blue collar worker possible strength has cool under pressure, and then a likely flaw is blunt. So, blunt has no mechanical advantage, or disadvantage, rather. But I think if we hop to the next slide, we can see what cool under pressure would do mechanically. So we're going to hop onto that next slide. Yeah, strength, cool under pressure. You can spend an adversity token, which we will get to in a bit, to take half of your die's value instead of rolling on a snap decision. So we will go through all of those terms a little bit later, but basically what this means is you can spend a resource to have a better result on your roll, basically.
The strengths end up equaling mechanics that can be used to add flavor, but also give every character like something extra and unique about them that
Exactly.
can also help tell the story.
Absolutely, yeah. Flaws are for role playing. Strengths are also for role playing. They just also will help you in the game portion of role playing game. Once you've picked your strengths and flaws, this game, again, is very character focused, so there are actually questions about your relationships with the other characters that you answer. They have a short, medium, and long version, so if you don't want to spend too much time on it, like if you have people who are reticent to role play, you could be like, just answer one question and we'll move on. Or they have like a whole list of stuff you can do for characters you think positively about, think negatively about, or you don't know. After that, you complete the finishing touches on your character. So every character has a backpack. This is where your equipment goes. You decide what you've got in your backpack. If your character is afraid of anything, you can write your fears there, and the game master can use that as fuel. So be wary. You pick your name, your last name, and then each character sheet has trope specific questions on it as well, which will help you flesh out your character a little bit more. So really it is that simple. Like there are 5 steps on this list, and it is not very difficult to make a Kids on Bikes character at all.
It's so easy, and it's nice because the full, if you're someone who is like, I love this, I'm going to go out and buy the whole set, I'm ready to play this, they have a bunch of pre-built stuff. So if you're trying to jump into it with a bunch of other people who've never played it, it's really nice that it's pre-built. And then but it's also very customizable. So you can change things in and out for what suits you. And this slide is all about the dice sizes that we were just talking about.
Yep.
Take it away.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much covered this. You said the D20 is what you're the best at. Superb. And the D4 is what you're terrible at. People will laugh at you when you try to do this. And then it just, a D6 is still not great. A D8 is below average. D10 is about average or above average. D12 is pretty impressive. And then that D20, again, is what you are the best in the world at. So I think we can see how it all kind of comes together with the 6 stats and then the 6 dice. So yeah, pretty straightforward on that. Beyond that, playing the game, so obviously you're going to roll one of these dice at some point.
Yeah, anytime your character is trying to do something, there may be a situation where the game master says, okay, well, you have to make a check to see if that works. Like all GMs play games in different ways. And for reasonable things, for the most part, you probably won't have to make a check. But in certain situations, you will have to make a check to see how well that goes.
Yeah.
And in those situations, this game, the rules are that the game master has to set the DC or set the difficulty check before you make that roll.
Yes.
And for game masters, there's an outline of what level to set that difficulty at. And then it can be up to the player. It's sort of a conversation between the player and the GM per what stat they would like to try to use. Because you do have the option of using any of your stats. However, it may make the difficulty higher or lower depending on what that stat is.
Yes.
So, like,
that's totally right.
For example, if there were a lock, there might be a relatively, like, there might be a middling level check to try to pick the lock and a higher level difficulty check to just break it with strength. But if you have a D4 in intelligence, and you're pretty sure you can't charm the lock into opening, but you've got a D20 in strength, you're going to go for trying to break it because you have a higher chance of success, even if the DC is higher.
Yes. Kids on Bikes is a very, I mean, they say it right in the description of the game. It's collaborative, even more so than other RPGs where, like, you as the GM, if you're GMing this, you're not always the letter of the law, right? Like, their input from players is valued in this game very much so. In a situation like, yeah, if you wanna try and break the lock instead of trying to pick it, that is something that you would be able to pitch to your game master.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, the GM always lets the player know the difficulty value before the roll.
Well, they're supposed to, but
They're supposed to. Doesn't
think,
always happen. I know it doesn't always happen for me when I run the game. Sometimes I forget, but you're supposed to let them know.
In gameplay, there's that. But I think also in gameplay, there are sometimes situations which I've found and I've seen with other GMs where it's like,
it's more exciting if it's a secret.
Sometimes there's not a DC. It's just whoever does the best gets it. Sometimes there's DC for a little bit of knowledge, but there's a higher DC for a lot of knowledge.
Yes.
Sometimes I've done ones where I've been like, you want to hit a certain number, and the further away from it, the worse it is for you, up or down. If I'm trying to get like an accuracy, if I'm setting an accuracy on a DC.
Yeah. There are margins of success in the game, success and failure in the game too.
Yeah. Do you know what the official margins of success and failure are?
Oh, I can look them up in my handy dandy PDF if you give me a moment.
Amazing. Yeah, there's definitely, it's not super, super high or low, but it can make a difference, especially when, as we start to talk about, which I'm sure we're about to transition into, talking about adversity points and exploding.
Yes, I think we've got exploding dice next on the docket. And then adversity tokens.
Amazing.
Let's see.
Margins of success, though.
Yes. There we go. So let's see. I'm gonna do the best success and the worst, and then you guys can fill it in with your imaginations out there.
Or make it up.
Yeah, or make it up. If a margin of success, is above 10 above the target number or higher, the character succeeds smoothly and easily.
So
I'll do 0 too. Yeah.
Let's say it was a DC 10 and someone got a 20, then that would be that extreme ease.
Yeah. Yep. If you get, if you hit the difficulty value exactly, that's a success, but only just barely. Nothing surprising happens. the player and the GM should make this a success by the skin of the teeth. You know, it's a success, but you
You
had to
just
work
did
there.
it.
And then if you get 15 below the DC or lower,
15 below. Oof.
yeah, 15 below is the cap for this.
So
That's
DC
it,
16 and you get a 1.
and you get a 1, yeah. Which is, always possible. That would be a staggering and catastrophic failure. That would be, oh, you've
Hope you
exploded the
don't
town,
die.
Yeah.
Hope this wasn't that important of a check you were making.
Yes.
Which, if the
So that's
DC is 16, that's a pretty important check you're
that.
making.
Yeah, 16 is a difficult check. I mean, if you look at the die values on here, 16 is not possible on its own on any of the dice except for 1. So 16 would be a difficult check. But exploding dice would make it more easy. We're going to
What are
transition.
exploding
Whoa.
dice?
Whoa, what are exploding dice? So basically, when a die rolls the maximum amount, it explodes, meaning you can roll again and add that new number to the maximum number that you just rolled. So say you're rolling a d4, which is what you're horrible at, and you roll a 4 on the die, you go, oh, hell yeah. You roll that die again, so you get a 3. So you add the 4 and the 3 for a 7. And then you add
And
any other applicable things on your character sheet to get your total.
something to note about this is you can continuously explode and keep exploding, but once you succeed, that's the last explosion.
Absolutely
So
correct.
let's say the DC was 21, just for example. You get a nat 20. If you get a second nat 20, you do not get to keep going.
Yeah.
You still did really well.
That's a pretty big margin of success
That's
on
huge.
that one.
Exactly. But it does not go indefinitely.
Yeah. Yes. But if
And
the
that's
DC is
exploding.
21 and you have a D4 and you keep on rolling 4s until you get to,
That's wild.
That would be absolutely wild.
Right. A more accurate scenario would be, let's say the DC is set at 6, but you only have a D4. You roll your D4, you get a 4. Amazing. You roll another 4. You cap it at 8 because you have still succeeded.
Exactly. Something when I was watching Misfits and Magic, I was like, you're supposed to stop when you hit the difficulty value.
I know. I have not necessarily done that because, sometimes it's fun to not do
Oh,
that.
I mean, absolutely. Like, if the
Sometimes-
good rolls are coming, you want them to keep going.
Sometimes players can have an explosion chain as a treat.
Yeah, as a treat. Just every once in a while. Yes. Something that can also up your chances of a success are adversity tokens.
Yeah, let's say, what if I don't do it? What if I don't get the number? What if I just did badly? Do I just cry?
Well, you can cry, but
I'm so
you do
glad
get
this
a
is a
little
safe
treat for
space.
your failure. The GM
love
will
it.
give you an adversity token when you fail a roll. And these tokens, if you're playing at a physical table, you can have little physical tokens. And if you're like me, who loves physical tokens, it's amazing and excellent.
Yes, this is the other thing that I like to say about why this is one of my favorite systems to play, is because I use candy for adversity tokens.
Amazing.
So this game, you get to roll all the shapes, and even if you don't succeed on your roll, you get a prize.
It's great. Like, just mwah, chef's kiss. I love that.
And it's baked in that you are rewarded for trying and not succeeding, so you are more likely to keep trying things.
Yeah.
And that is valuable in life as well as in gaming.
I just gotta say, that's some good game design right there. That is, motivation to keep on rolling. And in an RPG, you want to keep rolling.
it gives more weight to, like, let's think about sometimes if something is a DC 5, you could roll anything higher, but maybe it makes the most sense to roll your D4 skill and try to explode, because even if you fail, you will have learned something from that experience.
Yes.
And also you have more of a chance of exploding. You have a 1 in 4 chance of exploding on a D4 versus a 1 in 6 chance of exploding on a D6.
Hmm.
And so I think when we're talking about things in the game that say, even if you're not good at something, you should keep, it's a growth oriented mindset.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, we love that. Yes. So the adversity tokens can be used 1 for 1 to bump a roll's results too, which is really nice. If you've banked a handful of them and you fail by a handful, you can spend all of those. The
The
game also encourages teamwork, so you can spend your adversity token to help someone else, so long as you can explain how your character is helping in this moment.
Yeah. I really love that too, because when I teach it to kids, we're always like, it's 1 for me or 2 for you. Um, and you can also use adversity tokens from a bunch of fellow players, so it helps to really build a collaborative scene. And when we're talking about those, like, margin of success rates, you could also potentially boost a margin of success up by a significant amount if you're willing to spend a whole bunch of those adversity tokens, that also play into those strengths we were talking about before that are on the more complicated version of character sheets.
Yes. You can also, if you can spend adversity tokens to change the margin of success, you can use them to change the margin of failure too. You can fail not as poorly if you spend an
Yeah,
adversity token, which can be a
yeah.
real boon.
They're a really nice mechanic that makes it feel like your effort was not worth nothing. I think at the end of the day, because
Yes.
either you succeeded a whole bunch or you have all of this, you know, I've been through it, that you can,
Yeah.
it's almost like wisdom. You're banking wisdom of 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb.
Absolutely. And I gotta say, it feels so much better than, oh, I missed my attack and now I'm gonna sit here for
For
15
an
minutes or
hour,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah. Not to name any
Ugh.
names, but
Not to name any names. Though I do think this, and I don't know if this is the next part, but I think this, something we have to mention is the exception to the rule is when it comes to snap decisions.
yes. Yes.
Um, so most of the time in the game, this game doesn't have combat in the traditional form that other nameless games might. Um, though combat is treated in a certain way, things are more approached as planned actions versus snap decisions. So
Yes.
a planned action, something that's really cool is, any planned action, if the DC is half your die level or below, for a planned action, you can simply take half on that. You don't get any adversity tokens. You don't get to, like, achieve by any large amount or anything. But so, for example, let's say you have a D20 in intelligence and there is uh, a word scramble that is a DC 10 to unscramble to get the password to something. You say, no problem, planned action, I take half. You succeed and you simply succeed, you get the password. You don't get any special information or anything. So it is a nice way to be able to rely on things you're good at. And in terms of storytelling, like, you want your character who is very intelligent to be able to regularly succeed, to easily succeed at intelligence-based things. However, in a situation where it is a snap decision, you cannot do these things. that's where you would always have to roll. And I believe there are certain things that don't apply in snap decisions with regards to strengths and adversity tokens, and those also might be like trope specific, but there's a lot of other like crunchy stuff that most of the time you don't have to worry about.
Yes, generally, if you're doing a snap decision, other people can't help you with their adversity tokens. You can always
Yes.
spend adversity tokens for yourself, but if you're, running down a hall being chased by a monster, that would be a snap decision type of role, and no one could help you with that. Um, Also,
If
kind of,
you
go
don't
ahead.
have the time to communicate in a snap decision, so you wouldn't have the
Exactly.
time to say, this is what I need help with, and then them help you.
Exactly. But kind of in a nice twist, consequences for failing a snap decision are a little less weighty actually than failing a planned action. Because like if you're being chased by a monster down the hallway, like the tension is already high. Like you don't need to do anything extra on a failed
Well,
snap
and it's
decision besides
also,
just, the
if
failure.
you were thinking about it in terms of like, I don't know, for example, 6 seconds or whatever, only so much could happen consequence wise in 6 seconds per in a planned action. So if you failed something within 6 seconds, chances are in the next 6 seconds you might have a chance to rectify it versus
Exactly.
a planned action going disastrously wrong could set off a cascade of planned actions that the GM had.
Whoa, whoa. It's like a quick time event in a video game as a snap decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so you did touch on combat very lightly
Yeah.
with the snap decisions. Yeah, combat roles, combat, there's not really such a thing as combat in Kids on Bikes. The roles work the same as any other role in the game. But I do think it's important to note that, like, unlike other games, but how often can I do this bit? I don't know. But in Kids on Bikes, you're not trading blow for blow. The outcome is determined by the applicable roles, and then the outcome is narrated by the GM and the players, if that's applicable. Um, so there's no HP in the game, but characters are fragile, and combat is likely going to have narrative consequences. So, like, even if you don't have HP, if if you break a bone, then your bone is broken, and you have to you have to role play that
If you
fact.
think about the source material for this, the vast majority of the characters in the source material are regular human people for whom serious consequences are serious. So they're the same kind of
Yes.
consequences that could happen to you or I in real life if we were living in, like, if we failed something very, very dangerous and in a reckless way.
Yes, it's think about like you're gonna have to do a little bit of method acting, when you play this game. Think about what a catastrophic consequence would be for you. Don't method act. We don't support method acting on this channel. Um,
Unless it's the kind like where Margot Robbie gave Ryan Gosling a present every single day on
See,
the set of Barbie. Yeah, she fully himbofied him. It's incredible.
that's just a nice thing to do for somebody. We support that, but not method acting. All right, we have touched on most of the mechanics of Kids on Bikes. We are going to take a short commercial break, and when we get back, we are going to talk about something that is very unique to Kids on Bikes, the powered character, which we will get into
Which truly
shortly.
I've never even messed with. So
Ooh,
excited
so
to
I
talk
get to
about
teach you
it.
about it.
I mean, no, like I've read the rules. I play a lot of games with kids, and we don't get to the chapter of the book
Oh,
where the powered character gets introduced, and that's fine. So if you
for
never
sure.
get there, that's fine.
That's
Like,
okay
comment,
too.
subscribe, etc. We'll be right back.
Yeah, we will be back, folks. Hello and welcome back to Rough Start. Today we are learning Kids on Bikes, the game of small towns and big adventures. Before the break, we learned about how you collaboratively world build in this game. We learned about creating characters and tropes. And we learned about all of those lovely game mechanics and the six stats in the game. Brains,
Yes,
brawn,
yes,
charm,
yes,
fight,
yes,
flight, and
yes,
grit.
yes. Oh my God, 100%.
And now, after the break, we are going to talk about the thing that I think is the most unique about Kids on Bikes, the powered character,
Yes.
which we've got a slide for coming up. There we go. Uh, the powered character is very unique because it is played by everyone at the table. So an individual player can't create a character with magic powers or psychic powers because you end up playing one all together. Um, so the GM introduces a powered character, and
When you
this
think
powered
about
character. Go ahead.
like Stranger Things, this is
Yeah,
going to be your 11. If you
this is
think about
11.
ET, this is ET.
Yeah. This is the titular ET. If you've
Yeah.
ever wanted to play ET, I was so fun fact about me. I was obsessed with ET as a child. I watched that movie so many times. It frightened my brother. It was just for me. I loved ET. So I would love to play ET on Kids on
Well,
Bikes.
and I think they don't, and you tell me because you have, here's Mary, the powered character. Um, I don't play him, he plays me. Crazy boy, what do you see out there? Um, uh, does Kids on Brooms have powered character as a mechanic?
No. Kids on Brooms, here we've got the handy dandy Kids on Brooms bike next to me still. It does not have a powered character like this because everyone uses magic in
Right,
Kids on Brooms. So it kind of replaces the powered character with a magic system.
right. So, and I think the same is pretty much true for Teens in Space. So, if you are playing with a table of people who all want to have special abilities, then you are better off going for Teens in Space or
Kids
Kids
on
on
Brooms.
Brooms.
Yeah.
And they are easy enough to flavor alternatively, like just replace magic or space with whatever like flavor you want to replace it with. Versus if you have a table of people who are like, I would like to experience the extraordinary, introducing this powered character that everybody controls. Because I mean, and we're going to go into it a little bit more, but the powered character can be, I mean, ET and 11 are very different types of
Yes.
powered characters as well. So yeah, please get more into the mechanics, and we can talk more about what that looks like in playing.
Yes. Well, I think it's interesting that before jumping into the mechanics, I believe I heard in an interview with the creators of Kids on Bikes that this was originally going to explicitly be a Stranger Things game.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
feel like you can see the footprint of that with the powered character. Like, that's 11. Like,
Well,
that's just what
and
it is.
Stranger Things in turn was inspired by
Inspired by
even
all of those,
Spielberg
Spielberg
movies
movies. Yeah.
and Stephen King. Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of just an Ouroboros, a snake eating itself at this point. Um, yeah. The powered character has different rules than the player characters. Um, so the powered character actually gets what they call aspects, and they get a handful of them. And they get written on a note card individually, and then actually are dispersed. Hi, my girlfriend just walked into the room. Hello. Uh, they are dispersed between the players. So each player will get a note card with an aspect on it and be in charge of role playing that aspect of the character. Um,
that's
Aspects,
cool.
yeah, it is. It's really cool. Um, the time that I played it, I had kind of a difficult time with it, but I feel like once you get into that mindset of like, this is my character, but also I'm in charge of this thing in front of me, this little note card, it becomes much easier to kind of flip in between the two. Um, and the aspects can be anything from like personality traits to actual like psychic powers. So it really depends, what the situation is, what aspect you get, plugged into.
How are the aspects decided?
The GM decides the aspects.
Got
There is an appendix in the book that has
of like
suggested
options.
aspects. Yeah, of options and things like that. But if you want to make your own, that's totally cool. But there are plenty of aspects in the book from like hates dogs to
Sure.
can
Yeah, love
shove
it.
you with their mind or something. So
Amazing.
anything is in there. It's a very long list of suggested aspects.
It makes me almost okay. So now I'm like concept. What about a Men in Black style game of this where everybody gets to control the alien? The like dude they gotta
Absolutely.
hang out with. All right, all right. I'm pondering.
All right,
Much to
yeah, yeah. Everyone is
consider.
that actually. I feel like that would actually work really well,
Yeah.
and I want to see that.
Well,
So do that now.
it's the kids on bikes, kids on brooms, men in black.
Yeah. Oh my God. Hold on. We've cracked the fucking code, Max. Holy
I'm
shit.
saying.
Holy shit. Yes, that's perfect. I mean, stream over. We don't even need to talk about how the psychic powered character works anymore. That's it.
No,
That's
please,
no.
please go on, go on.
Okay. The second aspect, no, well, aspect is a word in the game. So the second part of powered characters are psychic energy. So you've got psychic
Yeah,
energy tokens, much like adversity tokens. Um, the book suggests starting with 7 tokens to use to activate the powered character's magic powers. Those tokens refresh when the powered character gets a chance to rest, maybe get a hot meal, take a nap. Those power tokens will refresh. Um, Using powers is a very different type of role than the rest of the roles in the game. And it's a little bit more complicated, but not by a whole lot. Basically, you have to first spend a psychic energy token, and then you roll 2d4, so 2 4-sided dice. Um, you subtract that value.
oh God, this is too
Yeah.
complicated for
Yeah.
me already.
So basically the
This
GM
is
gives
why
you a
I
difficulty
never did
value.
this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Difficulty value is up here. You roll your 2d4 and then you subtract the 2d4 from the difficulty value. And then if the sum is 0, so if like the difficulty value is 4 and you roll 4, the sum is 0. The power goes off, and like the power happens. Maybe there's like a minor effect, like the powered character gets a bloody nose or something. But like the power happens. You move something with your mind. If that sum is a positive number, so like the difficulty value is 4 and you only get a 2, which would be really depressing on 2d4 getting a 2. But that value would then be positive, so the power actually would fail, unless the player in control of that power aspect wants to spend more psychic energy tokens, like you can spend adversity tokens.
God.
Did that make
Okay,
sense?
I would never play it that way. Here's I'm gonna be the teacher in yoga who's cool and is like, you don't have to do all that. Remember that percentage dice that we're not fucking using? Just use that and be like, this is the percent amount that's anytime I'm like, I don't know what tools are in my hand. And one of my third favorite thing about this game, you've hacked it, is you don't have to do that much math.
Yeah.
And that is too much math. I will never guarantee you I will never do that much math. I would never ask someone to do that much math. I heard
We
the word
hate
sum.
subtraction.
I heard positive. I heard other words. I dissociated for that whole portion, quite honestly, and I was like, the percentage die is looking pretty sexy right about
It's looking
now.
pretty good. But that's
Um,
rules is written again, but you can always do whatever you want in these games. Jonathan Gilmour and Doug Lewandowski are not going to be breathing down your neck, telling you how to
you
play the
have
game.
it.
So
Like, you have it. Like, it's there. It's lonely.
yeah,
Um, this is also an issue that I take with Kids on Brooms and consequentially Teens in Space, which is that they're like, oh, you get to have an extra die for, in Kids on Brooms it's magic, and in Teens in Space it's technology, and it's a
yeah.
D6, and I'm like, the percentage die, it's right there. The
Use the
extra
percentage.
D10,
Note
it's
to
right
Renegade
there.
Games: use the percentage die.
It's right
Why
there.
not?
You already have it. So usually that's what I do instead.
Yeah, so I mean that's a
Silly.
hot tip from us to you, audience.
Just
You
saying,
hack
if
the game,
you
do
need
whatever you
a
want with it.
gentler version of this game,
Yeah.
just use the extra D10 that you have.
Yes.
It's right there.
I definitely think, using tokens to activate your psychic powers makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um,
But then
so
just use
keep
the
that. But
D10. Why do you need all that math?
yeah. Some people like math, but I do think it's a little maybe it kind of scratches up against the game because like it's so different from everything else in the game. Like I feel
Yeah.
like it could just be a normal type of kids on bikes role. Um but
Right. Like, I
I'm
feel like you could also give everybody an aspect and then dole out and have everybody together decide like what that powered character's character sheet looks like, and
yeah,
then let each one of them roll the die. Like, there are hacks around this that feel like they fit closer to the structure of the rest of the game and don't add these like very convoluted mechanics.
for sure. Yeah, so that's I mean, but the good news is that's it for the powered character, pretty
Thank God.
much. Just those two, the aspects and the psychic energy tokens and the weird little
Just
bit of
that.
2d4s. Just that's it. Everyone kind of shares responsibility for playing the powered character. If you have an aspect in front of you, um, someone else can point out that aspect should be happening right now, which is very helpful, so you don't always have to think about it if someone else is like,
Well,
oh
you're
hey,
right.
that's coming into play.
Allowed.
Yeah, very much allowed to point out other people's aspects. um
Very much allowed to remind the GM that they're supposed to set a DC.
yeah, we're all just trying to help each other. It's a collaborative game, it's a conversational game. We're just looking out for each other. All right. The last thing I want to talk about is running the game proper. Just kind of some tips and tricks. We don't have to spend too long on this. But what is running the game of Kids on Bikes like, Max?
I mean, I feel like I've more than peppered in a lot of
Definitely.
my judiciously peppered in a lot of my hacks and how I choose to change and or reinterpret the rules in the game. But yeah, I think my biggest one is I love to do, especially now that Halloween just recently passed, you get your discount Halloween candy. And
Yeah.
then instead of adversity tokens, I set up a little chart of where everybody's sitting, and I put the adversity token on the player's spot, but they don't get to eat it until they've spent it. So it's the immediate reward as well as the delayed reward, which is super
Yes.
fun, and good for your brain chemistry or whatever. Um, I I also find with newer players, like what I was saying about, I find a lot of the appeal of role playing games, not to be named, um, comes from math rocks are pretty, and you should be allowed to roll them all, and getting to make your own character.
Yeah.
And that's what I see, like when I ask people, I run a kids RPG and LARP camp, and this is my favorite system to run with kids, and I've run it with kids as young as 4 years old. And they've been able to get at least somewhat grasp the concepts of it, especially being helped by kids who are older than that.
Amazing.
So it's a really quick way to jump into it, and it's really fun to be able to make your own character. So I think my biggest advice for people who are looking at this game is, and with any RPGs in general, is take the rules that feel fun to you and use those, and then throw away anything you don't like. And so in that sense, I think the tropes that are pre-built are great, but even the like the quick start version of the game doesn't necessarily have tropes, but it does have there's an official quick start version of the game, not my hacked version, which is the like super quick version. It still gives you strengths and flaws, which have those special mechanics, and that is a great way to. I find with that, I will start applying mechanics as I see people building their characters, and almost like rewarding my players in game with those extra additional mechanics when I feel like they have a grasp of the game system. Because there are some people who will never get past the like, I roll a die for a thing, and that is the level of gameplay that they can hold on to, and that's valid. And other people are like, I want to get really smart about how I save and use my things, and they're also making really intelligent role-playing choices, and you want to be able to reward that. And so that is typically how I will do this sort of game.
For sure. I think that's great. I using candy as tokens, I think, is brilliant. And anything to make the game, especially if you're working with kids, like something that is easy and understandable, and just a lovely little bite-sized adventure. I think that's perfect.
And like we've established, it's possible. Like it's just noun, in or at or with, like it's so easy to apply this to so many different themes.
Yes, absolutely. I've got a couple of pieces of advice from having run some kids on bikes, kids on brooms style games. If you are not doing like the quick start, and if you're going with the world building aspect, I would hold off on writing the story until after your players have done world building, because then you can really incorporate what they talked about into the story and make it a core element of the story. And players really appreciate when you do that. It makes, everyone wants to be included. So we really, really flesh it out that way.
I think that's also, we didn't really mention it, but something that I recommend for pretty much any game, especially if it's something that you want to have as a multi-session thing, which this game really lends itself well to, is having a session 0, which is you're not role-playing in that session, and that's why it's session 0. You are going through the mechanics of the game, building your characters, or ironing less building your characters, ideally ironing out kinks in your characters. But every single time I have players who show up who like don't have their character built or whatever, it's fine.
It always happens.
This game is so easy, so that you could really do it, but you could also do that world building in the session 0. And that's also a really safe place. Something that this game goes into, even in the quick start version of the game, is those like and I'm not sure what language they use, but I know a lot of people are very familiar with like lines and veils.
Yes, the image is gonna be reversed, but in Kids on Brooms, setting boundaries. This is also this is the first page of Kids on Bikes and Kids on Brooms. Read this, use it.
Yeah, so that's a really great thing too to start off with, and like to establish a safe space from the get-go with your players. And I think that's true in any game at all. Any game that I even do a mini session 0 with folks, like at the beginning of games that I run that are just the course of an evening.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
this game is great because it does lend itself to shorter or longer versions of play, provided you are addressing the things that make everyone feel like they're having a good time and like they understand it.
Yes, absolutely. Highly recommend. The Kids on Bikes is actually so excellent at, the session 0, the setting boundaries. They have a note on, race, gender, sexuality, disability, and portraying those things in an RPG. A fantastic read. Highly, highly recommend reading those portions of Kids on Bikes. Love that. Yes. The last little bit of running the game that I want to stress is I have said it multiple times, but the game is a conversation. It's give and take. When it comes to narrative control, the the rules explicitly state that the players can narrate what happens as well. Especially on things like if they succeed very well, it is definitely in your toolbox of tools as a GM to let the player narrate how well they succeed. Like let them feel good about a success like that. So definitely, give and take. Give them something. Let them also narrate. I think that is so important for Kids on Bikes.
Well into improv heavy games.
Yes.
And games that are what I like about this, and especially my hack, which doesn't have that much math, is that you don't have to lean too much on the mechanics, but they're there to support you if you want them.
Yes.
And that's something that I appreciate about like any good RPG has that for you.
Yes. Yes, and any good RPG also knows that failure isn't necessarily bad, like kind of spring backing off of my point about narrative control. In games like this, failure is just about who has the narrative control. In a failure, the GM has narrative control. It doesn't always mean that you explicitly like fail what you're trying to do, right? It just means that something maybe unexpected happens. Like failing forward is definitely a part of this game. And you always want to be moving the story towards something, right?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. I mean, you can also just meander and,
Up
just hang
it
out
could
with
be
your
an
friends. Like, that's
exploration
fine
game,
too.
or if it's a puzzle, yeah. I don't know if this is the best RPG for that kind of thing, but go off,
You do you out there,
I think it lends itself very well as a stepping stone to other unnameable games, that if someone is interested in trying games that are more complicated, this one is simple enough to grasp and an easy enough like starting off point.
You get all the RPG building blocks here.
Yeah.
Perfect. That brings it to the end for me. Do you have anything to add about Kids on Bikes, Max?
No, I don't think so. I think we really touched on everything, and
I think so too.
Mary's getting out of here, so
Everyone say bye, Mary.
there he goes.
There he goes. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Yeah,
Your
absolutely.
infinite wisdom on Kids on Bikes.
Oh my God, you're too
handy.
nice.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching tonight. Once again, we are Rough Magic Games. You can check out all of our information in the description below. You can find me on Twitter at the Cornbreb. I'm on Blue Sky these days as well. It's just at Cornbreb there. Max, you are getting off of social media, so
I'm the opposite. Find me nowhere. I'm in the woods
find you
touching
living in the
grass.
woods. Yeah, like,
Don't
and I
find
respect
me
that and admire
intentionally
that
Thank
so
you.
much. Amazing. So yeah, check out Rough Magic if you feel so inclined. And Rough Start will be back next episode, talking about the RPG Wander Home with Vixie from Pocket Dragon Pub, another streaming channel on YouTube, which I am so excited about. So we will see y'all there. All right, say bye, Max.
Bye, Max.
Bye.